Greetings, YouTube and Twitch. Hello! I am now officially being, live in this entire thing. I am Tantus Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and once again, welcome you to, learning tabletop stuff. And we're continuing our basic tour of introducing you to a bunch of species that you can play in Starfinder. The entire idea of this is not to give you all the stats, not to break down the numbers, but give you the flavor, the community, how they are described, how they look, get you some ideas of what it means to play these various different species from various planets and places throughout not only Galarian solar system, but through many different solar systems. Might have to close that window. Of course, something going on as soon as I close the shades and do that. But anyway, so I've prepared 18 today, going alphabetically using the Archives of Nethys version of Starfinder site, E through G. So it's a good chunk of them. This is actually what I prepared last time I did one of these videos, but I was getting tired and killed, and these are a lot. You know, some of them are a lot more deeper than others. I'm going over the basic information that's provided. Again, Archives of Nethys is a great place for all this. I'm trying to summarize the stuff that's up there. There are other books and things that can be provided. Things like a lot of the Alien Archives will provide a lot more things. But a lot of them also present things in very combative ways. The first one we're going to start with is actually from one of the adventure paths, one of the Dead Suns adventure paths. So, I mean, that's where it's included. And yes, the Alien Archives provide ways to play a bunch of these, but again, a lot of the Alien Archives oftentimes portray them as these are possible combative things or things that you have to deal with that have challenges related to them. So, it might not be all the information you need. But anyway, we should dive into it today so we don't go too long, and we want to learn all we can about these various folks. So let me throw myself over in the corner and let's get this started with this one here. Ba-bam! So, we will start with our going through these various species with the Elebrain. So they're native to Eox. And a little summary of Eox. It's the dead world. That's the easiest way to say it. It's technically an undead. It's not really an undead planet. Eox is a very unique planet, as it is called the Dead Planet, and there's a lot of undead and a lot of things like that. What we have here is basically a leftover of the original inhabitants, original Eoxians that exist on this planet. They were nearly wiped out in a calamity that ravaged the planet and turned it into a dead planet. And basically, there's only a small, tiny population of these folks living alive. They're very human-like. There is suggestion that perhaps they have a common ancestor with humanity. The fact is, a lot of the planets in the Galarian solar system are connected together through various portals. Similarly, there are portals to a lot of the outer planes. There are portals to here. And Elebrain stands about 6 feet tall, has pale skin, large dark eyes, oversized craniums with distended foreheads. They're entirely hairless, but there is a small minority that grows kind of wisp of hairs on the scalp and thin eyebrows, and they're known for being knowledge seekers. Unfortunately, a lot of the knowledge that they sought, that their ancestors sought back in the old days, resulted in the apocalypse, which resulted in the dead planetness of Eox, but yeah. Con int are the positives, whiz is the negative. They can find weaknesses, have an intellectual knack, and locate vision. Just to summarize a little things about what they have. We're going to kind of go over the summary that way when it comes to abilities. So that's effectively what we know about them. If you want to learn more, the Dead Suns Adventure Path is the place to go to. Yeah. You can, of course, get the entire adventure path in one hardcover corporate compilation, and that's where it has information on that. But let's move on to from a adventure path race to a mollusk. Yes, a species of mollusks. These are the Embri. They're mollusks that have a incredibly rigid social order. Yeah. So, everyone knows its place in their hierarchy, their duties they have to play. And the thing about rebels and freethinkers is when they're discovered, they're either exiled or executed. Most likely, if you're a player playing an Embri, you're probably a rebel freethinker that has been, exiled and not executed. Their rigid system has allowed them to excel in technology, magical development, and the thing is, though, again, there's like a soullessness about their entire society that can be very well seen because of this your place kind of mentality that is their society. Yeah. They were originally aquatic. They have 4 strong limbs with claws at the end, allowing them to walk upright on land. Their claws have flexibility to use tools and weapons. They're about 4 feet tall with a tail that's a little bit longer than that, weigh about 200 pounds. They do reproduce asexually. They bud, similar to some other mollusks, and used to do that based on various seasons in the world. But again, because of bureaucracy and the strict, rigid structure, effectively... Thanks, motorcycle. That would have been loud even with the window closed. It's a mollusk man, an Embri. Or mollusk... Technically, mollusk... ungendered, because it's asexual. And they reproduce by budding. So now they actually have a bureaucracy which schedules when you're allowed to bud, but you also have to go to the offices of spawning administration. Young Embri are raised in introducible academies, you're trained to be digital and compliant, while informing on classmates who have deviant thinking or anomalous independence. Yeah! They have a huge brain sac at the top of their head, and their face consists of 2 closely set eyes above this slit that function as a combination of nose and ears. And they exhale from that orifice with a whistling speech. Mouths are solely for eating and tucked on the other side of their bodies. Eating is private, because, you kind of have to, like... It's basically very starfishy that their mouth is on the bottom of their body. Yeah, Tartarian government, it really is. We'll get to more about it. There's more to talk about it. And anyway, they think that they're repulsed by how open and communally other races eat together. So they're very private about their eating. They do have a lot of social conditioning and ways to eliminate displays of emotion, which they kind of consider barbaric, and one of the main ways is masks. They wear these ornate masks. It denotes social standing, civil responsibilities. Motorcycles are just out in power today. And a lot of times the masks are identifying factors between them. You'll know who you are by mask. They wear all the time, even when sleeping, and it's an embarrassment to be without a mask. Yeah. Again, it comes down to... showing off massive amounts of thoughts and feelings is also seen as, like, bad. It's not that they don't have emotions, it's just keep them in check and keep them private kind of things. Don't express them to others. So, it turns out this rigid totalitarian society is controlled by dun 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 hell. Yeah, good old Asmodeus and the devils are really the people that are in charge of it. Devils have secret tunnels under their homeworld where a small group of them, known as speakers, communicate directly with these devils and enact their infernal designs to the planet. They're granted magical powers. They oftentimes are the diplomats or envoys to other pact worlds. The speakers, the ones that speak to the devils. But they also do shield their people from basically the individuals thinking and, extending Hell's designs to the rest of the galaxy. And the thing is, they're smart about it. Because the society is built in such a way that the diabolic hell taint is very subtle. It's persuasive, but it's subtle. Because, like, there are things like infernal words and phrases which show up, but they do shun deific obedience as a expression connected to the divine and stuff like that. So there's also iconography in their architecture which looks very infernal. So, yeah, they have a Tatarian government which is really probably pretty awful, but it is technically controlled by hell. The Outer Planes are still at their best, even in space. Con and Int are the bonuses, Chris with the penalty. They're, of course, master emotions, and they have shielded thoughts against things like that, and they're very wary. There are some alternate ability adjustments and alternate abilities that you can choose from, along with some alternate racial traits, if you want to check those out. But that's the Embri. These is mollusks that serve hell. Alright, let's keep moving on, because we have more to talk about! Let's talk about the Endiffians. So they have humanoid skeletons. That's the first way to describe these individuals, because after that, we get weird. A little bit. Because they have 2 arms, 2 legs, and the skeleton, but they have incredibly elastic flesh. They basically can reform their appearance at a cellular level. They can modify individual cells to absorb or reflect light, producing a wide variety of colors. They basically can shape themselves into a simulacra of any humanoid there is, almost, because of this. Their hands are very malleable, allowing them to mold their grip to suit any perfects. So, like, scaling cliffs and various things is very easy. Holding on to weapons of any kind of form or shape. A lot of things like that. So, Endiffians find themselves in jobs that involve, well, subterfuge. I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing because of the way that they're built. They're a little like doppelgangers, except humanoids. But it's the same kind of thing that they infiltrate and things. Now, granted, while they are acting in these subterfuge, a lot of times they pursue their own schemes. A lot of them will move themselves into positions to stir up animosities, basically to cause some issues, but also allow them to increase whatever plot they're working on at the same time. Towards the end of their lives, their flesh turns pale and brittle. There's cracks that form in places that they reshape a lot very often. An elder will take pride in the lattice work that represents a lifetime of their changes, and rare aged ones with exceptionally smooth skin can find work as trusted advisors and diplomats. See, that's the thing, is if you're an old Endiffian and you don't have a lot of those cracks, it means you weren't shape-changing a lot and were in your natural form most of the time. Hence why trusted advisor or diplomat. It's like, oh, hey, you weren't taking advantage of that. They're about 6 feet tall, 280 pounds. Int and Charisma are the bonuses. Dex is their penalty. They're detailed orienting. They've got their enveloping gift. And, of course, they can change their form. As long as it's a humanoid with 2 arms, 2 legs. I mean, that's the thing is, shapeshifting fans, that's probably where a lot of the non-spy employed ones end up in, mechanical fields. I gotta be honest, that is a thing, because of their grip, that gives them better athletics, or disarming and stuff like that. Certainly there are mechanical fields that would be good for that. And yeah, there might be some that do end up in there. Alright, so we got 2 to speak of at one time, and we'll start with the first one. Our good friend here, who is Fungus. Yeah, Fungus is the best way. So we're going to talk about the 2 different groups here that are technically 1, but 2. The Entu. And this is an Entu Colony. So, what are Entu? Well, they're spores. They're like fungal spores. They originally kind of are a collection of it. And they basically fuse together in patterns that basically simulate neurons to create a sapient mobile fungal colony. Effectively, they are, on their own, they're not much, but, like, when a bunch of them are together, they begin to form, like, a form of a brain. They kind of grow into a brain. So these structures that kind of evolve in the colony then basically give it consciousness and give it sensory information. So basically, once a colony reaches a certain size, a portion of it will kind of form itself naturally into a being, a living being. Not only just a living being, but because it's already alive, but a sentient being. So in the first weeks of life, the spores are kind of like coalesce in these pools of slime with malleable pseudopod-like organs. And this is kind of like, they can kind of communicate telepathically at this point in time, and they kind of are beginning to get sensory emotional informations. Once they reach maturity, they can reproduce asexually, which is about 6 months since they first started sprouting mycelia. A lot of times, spores will integrate into the parent colony. Basically, the colony grows. The body kind of continues to go. But sometimes some will split off to form a new colony. Now here's an interesting thing about them. They are not parasitic, but they feed on emotion and thought. And here's where our second group, which we'll look at in a second, is they sometimes seek to consensually merge with another sentient creature rather than form into a full-fledged independent colony. Instead of harming their host, they adapt their cells to mimic the host's brain and nerve tissue. Their mycelia intertwine with the host's nervous system, creating new synapses, enhancing the sections of the host's brains. And despite inhabiting the body, it retains a separate consciousness which intertwines with the host through shared functioning memory and sensory input. This symbiotic life form, called an Entu Symbiote, attains self-awareness, complex thought, and linguistic ability. So it's interesting because you're like 2 characters in one. Hello, Tokyo Zeno. Hey. This integration can sometimes result in the symbiote's offspring already seeded with fungal life integrated into bodies and brains. Basically, if I become an Entu Symbiote and I have children, I could already have the symbiotic stuff, in there. This has led to basically uplifting entire species of previous non-sentient animals. And the big example of this is, of course, which I was going to switch the picture I switched from. These guys here, which are the Nalentu. They're founding species of the Freehold, and they are most prominent that they are an example of symbiosis over the span of generations. They're like these bat-like animals that evolved on a planet, unintelligent. They were fruit-eating creatures. Spores came into their evolution early, and basically these spores were a way of uplifting them. The concept of like, it's sort of like there are plenty of creatures on our planet which maybe have the potential to become a race closer to us, like not only a sentient race, but a sentient advanced race. The Entu basically have a way of strengthening brain power and enhancing this. So the Nalentu today inhabit these jungle cities built around green spaces known as the Garden of Thoughts. They cultivate spores of Entu for future generations. They consider themselves their own species, but they refer to themselves and other Nalentus using plural nouns, basically in deference to this origin that they do have the symbiote in them. So yeah, either way, the fungus that is the Entu seeks exposure to thought and emotion to survive. And those that are symbiotes prioritize the host's needs. They do prefer to enter relationships with creatures that can benefit from cellular mimicry. living with the creature as the host does and dying with it. And an Entu colony on its own, though, can survive about 300 years before it kind of breaks down, and, there's issues there. So if you're playing a colony, 2 intelligence, 2 charisma, or bonus to intelligence, charisma, penalties to strength, you're amorphous because they're oozes, technically. They've a blind sense. They're not like a full ooze. They have limited ooze benefits and some limited telepathy. And they can do like a tactical symbiosis, too. Now, on the other hand, if you're talking about the Entu Symbiote, it only gets a bonus to intelligence. And this is one that I would probably recommend checking the Alien Archive for a little bit, because that's where they're from, for a little bit more information about playing one of these. Because I'm not sure if you're technically playing 2 characters or 1, and it's a little weird that way. It is a little weird that way, certainly. And I don't actually have Nilentu stats, so I don't know if the bonus to intelligence is Nilentu stats or not. So, an Entu Symbiote are small, medium, large animals with the Entu Symbiote subtype. So it is kind of like an animal thing. They get perceptions, augmentations, telepathy, natural weapons, and stuff like that. It's by animal, so the bat people are bats and stuff like that. It's a weird thing, but very interesting. Certainly not that they have these small colonies that can get into something and maybe advance it brain-wise. Boyds! So this is the Espraksa, Alien Archives 3. I'll try to mention the books for these. I did miss a few here. Let me grab you the books for the Endiffian and the Embri. The Endiffians were in the Reach of the Empire book, and Alien Archive 2 for the Embri. I think mentioning the books that they were originally put in, where it kind of puts a lot of where this information is from. Unfortunately, a lot more information isn't shown. But these are avians. They originated near space planet of Neuron. It's a small frigid planetoid in basically the farthest regions of the solar system that it's in. Rugged with a lot of biomes, taigas, rocky badlands, mountains, ice-filled canyons. Sorry. Whatever color they have depends on where their ancestors came from. So effectively, they are colored depending on where their ancestors developed and habitated within the planet itself. Those that are from the taigas are kind of deep brown russet feathers. If you're on the snowy peaks, you have white or gray feathers. Maybe black or mossy green speckles. They have a thick collar of feathers to keep their long, slender necks warm. They have these lengthy antenna-like feathers that extend from the inner corners of their eyes. Males have a crest of feathers that extend the crown of their heads to express communication and communicate emotions. They're about 7 feet tall and 175 pounds. They do consider themselves offspring of deities like Desna and Wadian, unifying the two of them in something called the Wings. They're an open, social, free-spirited society, basically expressing the idea that they are avians. They are birds. They fly. It's, that's what it is. The rule of law is still important to the society, though, but it implies wisdom, compassion, pretty equally to everyone. And they have settlements dedicated to their dual gods, the Wings, Desna and Wadian. They do like an idea of harmony with nature when they build their settlements. They don't like damaging the the environment heavily. Towns and homes are usually high up in trees or terrain. This architecture does mean that if you're a land-bound creature visiting them, it's kind of difficult. Though with tourism as being a thing that's beginning to exist, they are a species that's traveling out into the stars, and meeting with other species and part of the near space group. Yeah, they've been accommodating more flightless creatures into their things. There is some wanderlust and gregarious that's intrinsic to their society. It means that various regions have their own quirks. And the thing is, those quirks, though, they're people do tend to try to preserve. You know, if my, family comes from a region where this thing is done, we want to make sure that thing is kept there. They do like exploring, which can be literal exploring, it can be interpersonal, it can be spiritual. The idea of exploring, whether or not, what form it takes, is an important part of their society. So they do like doing things like journeys of self-discovery, coming-of-age ceremonies. Some of them travel to galaxies. They'll make friends wherever they go, trying to even make friends with the surliest of folks, being positive and emotionally uplifting a lot of times, and a lot of them, once they return home, will tell tales of those that they met and made friends with along the way. In the other side of things, if you make an enemy with Espraksa, it's a hell of a name. They're basically going to be pretty much forever going to be your enemy. It is very passionate on that eneminess and lasts forever. When it comes to like adventuring and stuff like that, they take a lot of jobs because they are exposed to many cultures, many fields. So some of them find a lot of unique things that they do. And this diversity can also be a character flaw because then they don't have like a specialty a lot of times. The journey that a lot of them like to take, especially now that they travel to space, can last decades. Some of them, most when they return, it's when they've felt like the travels to the various places and exploring has filled enough novelty. They'll find a mate, settle down, start a family. And older ones are the leaders, the philosophers, the teachers, and will share their lifetime of exploration and discovery with those around them. And there are a few that, because of a lot of their breadth of experience, are celebrated even beyond their own planet. Wisdom and charisma bonuses, penalty to constitution. They do fly. They're good against the cold. They're empathic and multicultural. So that is the Espraksa. Espraksa? Oh, God, I am continuing to butcher that one, so apologies. Now here's one from the Temple of 12 book, which I have very little information on, but we can tell you about them. The Ferrans. They're native to Ferrantis 4. It's a high-gravity world that disappeared into a massive black hole a few decades ago. The surviving Ferrans live in a complex on the moon of Rathrin, which once orbited their home, but is now just held in place outside the black hole's event horizon. The moon base is self-sufficient. Effectively, their species is one disaster away from being wiped out. They're short, squat humanoids with kind of burrowed brows, bald heads. They have traditions rooted in science. They tend to be agnostic and atheistic. Compared to many other species, they have very little population left. They really need to do something as the small group they are to keep their numbers growing and to find a more stable home, honestly, than the moon, which is still stable outside of a black hole, which destroyed your home planet, in order to keep their species going. That is a thing that needs to be dealt with their people. Con and Inter bonuses, Dex is a penalty. They're small humanoids, low light vision, they got some momentum, radiation resistance, and they're sturdy. But that's the Ferrans. Not a lot about them. On the other hand, we can dive deep into one from the Interstellar Species book, the Formians. So, the Formians were very single-minded colonial. Basically, they are an insectoid species. That's the thing to talk about it. They look like giant ants. Their own distinct physiology. A segmented body with 6 legs. The real force for stability and locomotion. The upper body is very humanoid reminiscent. Their front legs have claw-like digits that give them motor control that is comparable to a lot of other humanoids. They have a carapace, of course. They're insectoid. It's a natural armor. The form and color kind of varies depending on like geographic region, maternal ancestries, things like that. Blacks, browns, reds, and yellows show up a lot. Some can be kind of have transparent iridescences like for various probably subspecies. Some have spikes, chitinous growths, other various things. They have 2 compound eyes. Well, they technically have 5 eyes, but the 2 compound eyes are the most prominent, but they have 5 eyes, technically. The 3 other ones are triangles around their head, primarily sensing light and basically helping with navigation. Their side-facing eyes give them about 360-degree vision. Well, the ancient was 360 degrees. Modern ones have more forward-facing eyes. They've kind of evolved that. Better defense perception, depth perception. They can see colors in the ultraviolet spectrum, but they use like that feature in social contexts and stuff like that. Their mouths have evolved over time. They used to be insectile mandibles, but they're more closer to something like would be equivalent to a human jaw nowadays. There are, inside the mouth, finger-like sensory appendages which filter particles, maneuver food, taste it. They do get speech from this kind of area. Passively, you might hear a lot of clicking and kind of noises from them. Yeah. They hatch from ovoid eggs about the size of a large melon. They're translucent, legless larvae. Rapidly grow over several months, envelop themselves in silken cocoons to pupate. And then a young adult emerges, and the form kind of, again, depends on the diet, environment, early on in life. That can kind of, it alters slightly how, like, again, coloration, form of their exoskeleton takes, or, yeah. Hives oftentimes nowadays will also, because there's workers, soldiers, mimarks, and more, will kind of designate where something grows up to what it's going to be, you know. Youths receive an intensive education and training for about a year before graduating and participating in community. Mature adults molt infrequently and irregularly, and will signal to the rest of the hive when they're kind of, that kind of thing is going on. Which is important to let the others know. So yeah, the thing is, early times for Formians were warlike. They battled with each other. Colonies were against each other. These collection of warring hives basically formed a collective then. An industrial collective with complex social hierarchies. There's a strict caste system to this day. But even with that caste system, there is a lot of value in the health and well-being of individuals within it. It's this weird juxtaposition is that, you know, like they have a place for themselves, but they want to ensure that everybody is, you know, well treated in their place. They perceive a lot of clues from their, like, pheromones, ultraviolet spectrum, which they can have organs to kind of produce some for others to see. Adding to their sounds means that social behavior from Formian is kind of difficult to see from others. And they also have potential for telepathic communication. Because they have limited telepathy, too. And sonic resistance, which is weird. They're from Castrovel, the second planet of the Pack World's sun. Basically, the Pack Worlds are the world where Ghibrani was at in Starfinder, or is at in Pathfinder. Yeah. Queens rule major settlements. That's a big thing about it. They're basically colonies. Though politically unified, the colonies do have cultural identities to each self. Basically, each individual hives are still there. And a lot of... They're an underground species because Castrovel's got a lot of horrible predators and stuff on the surface. You know, The ancestors lived in these jungles, underground, foraging at night to find mates. So, from a settlement, we get a queen. Sometimes there's higher ranking queens that rule an entire hive. Cities are very vast, miles in any direction. They tend to have things very utilitarian and stuff like that. Breaking down their society, their castes are queens, mimarks, taskmasters, warriors, workers. They're described as authoritarian by a lot of others, but it's not quite that way. There's a lot of self-determination in how they contribute to society for a lot of Formians. Queens, to a lesser extent mimarks and taskmasters, have ability that can control and coerce warriors and workers. It's actually considered highly inappropriate to use that unless it's an emergency situation. So it's basically the way that their colony evolves. These higher ranks do have abilities to manipulate and control the others, but you don't do that unless it's like an emergency in the hive. And a lot of individuals just focus on the quality of life of the hive. Let's make sure the hive is as best it can and everybody is doing the best they can. And individual contributions are looked at quite well. An individual worker has some autonomy and respect, certainly if they've contributed something great. A young Formian that's probably intended towards one role still will, if it demonstrates aptitude for a different one, the hive will redirect them into a position where they can thrive and contribute. So that's the thing is, like, if you were intended for this role, and that's kind of where they were originally hoping to put you into, and then all of a sudden you demonstrate, oh, you're really good at that. They're like, oh, no. Maybe you should work on that. Go over here. We can have you learn how to do this one. And, workers age out of basically the labor force eventually and kind of get into higher roles themselves. Formians don't tend to enjoy idle entertainment. They last through productive hobbies, personal projects. They like things like building new models, learning new skills. And since Castrovel has become a very peaceful planet, especially over the last 30 years, art and meditative exploration have become more important things too. Because again, like, art can be practical too for some reasons. Most Formians are non-reproductive. So there really isn't a sexual identity in most of them. So gender is largely cultural to a thing for them. So again, since many of them can't reproduce. But there's some more if you want to look into them. And there is some connections to some psychic abilities, which you can call the Call. And we'll, if you want to look into more of them, honestly, Interstellar Species does a lot to dive into Formians. They're a very interesting race to look into. But that's the Formians. They're kind of cool. So this is technically a Pathfinder image of them. I didn't find a good Starfinder version of it, because originally it's a Pathfinder species, but there is you can play them in Starfinder, of course. The Ganzi. Planar science touched by chaos. They have ancestors who were affected or dealt with chaotic outsiders known as Proteans. They have unusual features like serpent tails, feathers in their hairs, and are known as Proteinkin. Some are born from places where there's chaotic energies in the material plane seeping in from the outer plane. The nature of the drift travel is basically thought to influence the birth of some of these too, because drift kind of deals with some of the chaotic energies. Like tieflings and Azamars, they're typically aligned towards their ancestry, aka chaos. They're known for creativity and ancestry, anti-Atharian sentiments, and many are very artistic talents. The Perfect Storm is the book that mentions them. Con and charisma penalties to intelligence. I think I didn't say the Formian abilities. I'll grab those in a second here. Medium, dark vision, distortion resistance, observant, reverse face, and some alternate racial traits for them, actually. The Formians were strength, con, penalty to wisdom. They had their own senses. I think I said that. Limited telepathy, sonic resistance. I did say that. It's just I talked about more of them after that. Normally, I've been ending with them. Normally. The Gathol. Let's talk about the Gathol a little bit. So, Liberation of Locus 1 is the book that the Gathol were introduced in. They are hulking, hardy natives of Gagath, a mountainous planet in the Tenethkrol system. Their tribes warred with them for generations before the Aslanti arrived. And basically, they joined forces to fight the invaders. They lost, so now they're second-class citizens in the Aslanti Star Empire. Leading the alien cohort, one of their groups, into battle. So, yeah, they basically were tribal. The Aslanti invaded them and honestly uplifted them to space traveling. They have low light vision, cold resistance. They're native to the high mountains, natural weapons, and some stony plates in their bodies. This isn't the last time we will meet somebody that the Aslanti... it really is kind of like that. The people that the Aslanti Star Empire dicked with, because they've done a good job of that, messing around with people. So, this is the Ghibrani. They're beetle-like humanoids from the planet Elytrios. And this is in the 13th Gate book. They devastated their own world with a nuclear war. The survivors fended for themselves in the nuclear waste, while there was a bunch of them that lived comfortably in a city protected by a bubble of force. The lingering radiation, which even affected the city, caused rapid changes to their biology, so there's two subspecies. Husks, who have lost the use of their wings, and membranes, who grow idle in luxury. There's different stats for the husks and membranes, so you can check those out. They're medium humanoids regardless, affable. They've got, all of them have a land speed. The husks have a climb speed. The membranes have a fly speed. They have extracting buzz, low light vision, sturdy. And then, two subspecies which switch them out different between them. So yeah. I mean, they destroyed their planet in nuclear war, and so you get two sides to them. To those that lived out in the nuclear radiation, and those that only managed to barely survive with slight exposure in a bubble. Now here's a species that is also from Galarian originally. And we can talk about them, because I've talked about them in a Pathfinder video before. The Ghorans! The delicious plant people! They're back! So yes, I talked about these in a Pathfinder video before, honestly, in more recently styles of these long-form videos, but basically on Galarian, long before the gap, a druid basically created a species who was delicious. They were designed physiologically to be perfect, including the perfect taste. A flesh-like rind, that they were very delicious, and humans hunted them nearly to extinction. Each of them is only able to produce one seed, which is precarious for their species. So their numbers just dwindled. And, so, over the generations, they evolved from basically shambling vine-like creatures into basically humanoids like this. They're still ostracized by humans. When humans took to the stars, these Ghorans basically abandoned the pack worlds to forge a new identity. They found a planet they called Gorus Prime, terraformed it from a barren rock to a luscious floral paradise, and they flourished in this new world. They introduced genetic engineering to their own people, again, space travel, so they've expanded their reproductive abilities, meaning now it's not one child per one of them. And they have two subspecies now, subraces. Lithe and springy saplings and tall, dense oaklings. They're about the same size as humans, and they're very physically diverse, like humans are. And they can adjust their body shapes within the frame's limits. Their skin is fibrous, vines and rinds, and textured like moss-covered bark, and their faces consist of layered petals that flush and flitter at a whim. Each of them has a seed at their neighbor, a Gorus seed. They can expel it, put it in fertile soil, and left undisturbed for 1d6 days, it grows into a sapling that physically mirrors the original. It then grows into an oaking Ghoran if it's left undisturbed. A sapling Ghoran is fully grown in about 2 to 40 months, and then can choose to grow into an oakling, which takes a process of 1 to 6 weeks. And every 20 years or so, one will develop a new seed. So unlike the original Ghoran back on Galarian, where they only got 1 seed, this every about 20 years they can create a new seed. So every 20 years you can get a new kid, so to say. They don't really like flesh and blood creatures. They prefer things like Vesks to humans. There is rumors that they during the war between the during the silent wars between the Pack Worlds and Veskium, they found information in the Vesk. Their colonized planets, the Pack Worlds, have distrust for them, kind of because of these suspicions. Their society emphasizes communal life, friendship, and companionship. It's basically the idea that those things are things that were luxuries back in the day, so they look to them. They all gain a penalty to intelligence, bonus to charisma. Saplings are slender, get bonus to dexterity. Oaklings are taller and get a bonus to constitution. And again, either sometimes, if they're left undisturbed, they just become an oakling, or if they become a sapling, they have the choice to become an oakling later on if they choose to. Saplings are small, oaklings are medium in size. That's a big difference. They're still delicious. They got some limited plant benefits, and they have some past knowledge. They do gain a little bit of knowledge from their past existences. And they photosynthesize. They have alternate racial abilities and racial traits that you can check out. And again, they're in the book Alien Archive 2. Ooh, we'll definitely get these done today in a good time. I chose an appropriate number. So let's talk about this who here, which is, you wouldn't notice it, but this is a giant. I'm pretty sure stone giant. So yes. Giants. They're from the Ports of Call book. Ancient creatures. There's a lot of subspecies. They got size, strength, and stature. They're large humanoids. Bonuses to strength and con, penalties to dex. They're really good at throwing things. They're skilled. And they have subspecies. Fire, hill, slag, and stone are the ones that were defined in the book where they were from. Ports of Call. But I'm assuming you could probably adapt some of the other giant types to other subspecies in certain ways in the future. They're tall and muscular, about 9 to 15 feet tall. Subspecies depend on how tall they actually are. Yeah. So that's about all I've got on giants. There isn't really a lot of things in it. And so I'd say check out the book for more stuff. Similarly, one that's a blast from the past is our good friend the Gnolls. Oh, Gnolls. Now, they are hyena-headed humanoids, and again, they still, just like their old ancestors back on Galarian, they have a reputation as raiders, scavengers, and cannibals, because honestly, that's poor Galarian Gnolls back in Pathfinder 1st and 2nd edition. The bad ones give the ones that are just, they're not really bad or good, they're just neutral, bad reputation. So basically, bad actors give the rest of them bad reputation, and honestly, you know, they still did eat their dead and stuff like that. You know, and waste not, want not. When you die, we all eat you because you know you're dead anyway, and hey, that's free meat. We might need that meat. They're pragmatic. Anyway, they're capable hunters. They respect power and strength over their station and role, and kind of that's about it. The Starfile Alien character deck introduces them. That's a product that introduced these things. Bonus strength and con, penalty to intelligence, blind sense, dark vision, blind sense with scent, natural weapons, and rugged travel. Yep, double-sided cards that provide information on how to play these things and stuff like that. So that's the Gnoll introduced there. Now, of course, we have space goblins, goblins. So, according to ancient legends, time tells of a day when a tribe of clever goblins stowed away in a spacecraft and headed to Absalom Station, where they infiltrated the worst neighborhoods and set up camps in the engineering passages. They learned to build weapons and armors from parts, and, basically explored with the slightest provocation around the air. Basically, those were prone to exploring. They've hijacked other ships, spread to the stars. They're prevalent at Absalom Station more than anything. And the fact that they haven't had as much success spreading to the stars as people that know about them on Absalom Station are. People are grateful for that, They reproduce rapidly, so a lot of generations have gone since they went to the station. Fluctuating gravity, new diet, and radiation leaks have made them distinct offshoots from the original goblins on Galarian. They're a bit more intelligent. They instinctively are able to take apart a lot of technology and rebuild it to their needs. They're quicker as well. They can scuttle around vents and stuff, kind of basically swiping unprotected things. They still worship the old hero gods of Goblin Old. They've kind of adapted that to their new lifestyle a little bit. And many of them revere Triune, the machine god. Basically because they have this innate something with technology. That's why they believe they've been blessed by Triune to know more stuff. They think they'll go to some kind of scavenger's paradise in the future. Triune and Church don't acknowledge the goblins at all. Space goblins. Goblins from Galarian were known for their voracious appetite, basically eating everything they are. Space goblins were not afforded those luxuries on the station, so they had to sit on scraps of food and garbage, so they don't have that insatiable hunger, but they are very fixed with oral fixation. If they encounter a strange item, they'll do one of two things. Either dismantle it or eat it. That's the thing is, if they get a piece of technology that, isn't working, they might try to solve the problem by, chewing on it, putting it in their mouth, kind of tasting every part of it. It's oh, that's what's wrong with it. Okay. They still hate and fear dogs and horses. That was, the big thing that they were on Galarian. But they tend to refer to quadrupedal creatures they dislike as horses or dogs in general, depending on their size. And they still like making the dog slicers and things like that they used to make, but they're basically survival knights nowadays. Anyway, so yes. The physical differences between space goblins and Galarian's original goblins are very slight. Maybe a few inches taller. Eyes are a deeper shade of red. About 3.5 feet tall, 35 pounds, and a lot of that weight in their big old noggins. Bonuses to dexterity, penalty to charisma. Dark vision, they're fast, scroungers, and tinkerers. And that's your space goblins. Space goblins. Now, somebody that also knows the Atlantis Star Empire, the Gosclaw. So they're a feline species with a long, flexible neck, short tail, and pliable body. They basically developed a culture on their volatile continent of a rocky planet of Durin. The planet was rattled with earthquakes, volcanic activity. They built complex underground cities to withstand the shifting earth around them. They were still centuries away from star travel. Then an Atlantis scout ship crashed near their city. It had no survivors. They studied the vessel's technology learned about space travel, advanced weaponry from what they found. A few years later, the Aslanti Star Empire showed up. The Gosclaw, smart enough, knew that these people that showed up, their ship that crashed, their people didn't survive on it, they showed up to find out what happened to their ship. They're too advanced to fight. Basically, they approached them and offered their service with engineering powers. They said, like, look what we did. We reverse engineered your ship. We were centuries away from this, but we managed to learn what it is in the years since we got it. We can help. We're very good with engineering. We've quickly learned. So, Gosclaws have citizen status in the Star Empire and serve it diligently. They are in good shape in the Aslanti Star Empire because they're, there. Now, they don't have complete loyalty because they regard the Aslanti as benefactors that are dangerous and self-serving. The Aslanti Star Empire is always like that, But they think it's better to avoid the Aslanti and attract attention to them. So most that leave Durin work as Atlantis engineers, projects where they're kind of thin, flexible body as a benefit. But more than one of them is also stowed away in a ship to see other worlds. So certainly you could be one that stowed away somewhere and traveled somewhere. They've got smooth fur, and they present a kind of disarming appearance. The coloration of fur varies depending on the region of their weather in that areas, from dark, nearly black-brown to gold colors, kind of often darker around the tips of ears, limbs, and tails. They sometimes will dye their fur to express individuality. Because they lived underground for a lot of centuries, they're used to cramped quarters and conditions like that. They're quick-witted, individualistic, and they focus more on results rather than procedure a lot of times, which can annoy Aslanti managers, certainly. But again, they're very good at achieving their results. They look forward. The thing is, they see technology as a way to leapfrog evolution and go to the future. All right. And leapfrog into the future. Basically, to head into the future with that. So they maintain less traditions than a lot of other species, and view positions in the Aslanti hierarchy as more desirable for advancing their own culture. And they know the Aslanti aren't benevolent partners here. They are opportunists. If they can free themselves of Aslanti influence, they would. But they're smart enough to see that basically being conquered by the Aslanti Star Empire and being in the position they are has put them in a very good advantage situation. About 6 feet tall, 110 pounds. They're considered adults at 13 and live about 80 years. Bonus to Dex Intelligence, penalty to Wisdom. They have a burrow speed. And leaves a tunnel. It can leave a tunnel. Fire resistance, they're flexible, and mechanical talent. That's the Gosclaw. Gosclaw. Now, from the Alien Archive, we have the Grey. Thanks. Of course they had to have one of these. So, these are an interesting one because we don't know what planet or galaxy they come from. And as soon as the thing fell off, I was keeping something fell off my windowsill, and of course then the motorcycles comes zooming by again. Anyway, we don't know where they come from at all. Know what planet, galaxy. There's reports of unnerving abductions, nightmares, paralysis, mysterious experiments from countless worlds, as long as starships have sailed the dark space of the universe. Reports are fragmentary, unreliable, victims of hazy memories and stuff like that. Otherworldly presences are described because that's what little memory remains. Condescending interactions. They communicate only telepathically among their own times. Their faces are glassy black eyes, show little emotion or reaction. Their motivations are basically unknown. And to date, no efforts to successfully establish diplomatic relationships with them. They do seem to be searching for information rather than conquest, though. Paralytic abductions are always usually returned mostly unharmed, after scans or implants or things like that. The researchers wonder if it's accumulation of knowledge, or they're looking for some kind of specific information. There are those that believe they're maybe preparing for an all-out invasion. But yeah. Since drift travel came into existence, the rare reports of abductions, written off as conspiracy or delusion, have become much more of a thing. They've got sleek disk-space starships lurking in the corners of the drift, appearing seemingly out of nowhere to confront effectives with ineffective and unwary crews. So yeah. Bonus to intelligence, penalty to strength. They're small humanoids, dark vision. They've got their gray magic, and they can phase. And limited telepathy. Honestly, they're a weird one to even play, but they're in the Alien Archives, so it's an option. And now from the Starfinder Alien character deck, just like the Gnoll, we have the Grippli. I could not find a Space Grippli image. So that's just like the other one. I could not find Space Grippli. It's the Grippli from Pathfinder, from Golarion. They're small humanoid tree frogs, very colorful. They've gained advanced technology in the short term and now have interstellar trade. So their culture, which was hunting and gathering, has evolved rapidly. You know, it's sort of like the colony that wasn't on Golarion, basically, one of them got uplifted, and now you can't really find them very rare in the galaxy beyond in the Pact worlds, but a lot more of them are embracing this technology that's around them and are eager to explore the galaxy and meet the inhabitants, you know. It's sort of like there still is that side of them that wants to remain the traditional hunter and gathering because it's the simple life, but plenty of them are seeing like, oh, but I can just have a space laser and go to the space and stuff like that, and cool things like that, and go to these other planets and go meet other, you know, amphibians or other strange mollusk races and stuff. Dex wisdom bonuses, strength penalty. They got camouflage, climber, jumper, swamp stride. They're very frog. Grippli. But that's it for today. We finished up where I wanted to today. I could probably have gone into H, just because these weren't too bad. We only had the big one in the Formians, but honestly, I'm trying to figure out a good chunk of speaking about these species without overdoing it on myself and my voice. I know I've had some ones that have gotten pretty hefty and hitting me. But no. It's an interesting selection of various intelligent species. And honestly, I think that's the one thing about Starfinder is we find plenty of these humanoids or things that link back to things like Pathfinder and stuff. Gnolls, giants, goblins, Grippli. But also you find things like the Entu in their two forms, which are just fungal colonies. Or things like the Embri, which are mollusk creatures, various things that are very unique and interesting. And again, a lot of these have some information. I'm trying to point out what books and stuff you can look into where they originally were. It'll read up on the stats and stuff, but it's one of those things that we might not see more information on some of these things till Starfinder 2nd Edition, which is technically coming in the future, as of the time of this video. Truck heading by on my small road, but not built for trucks. It's a busy day today. But anyway, we'll do more of these in the future. I'll go through the rest of these and the species guy, and maybe we'll do like a couple of things. Like I do want to talk about Absalom Station at some point in time and some other things related to the Starfinder universe as a whole. And, you know, certainly when Starfinder 2nd Edition comes out, maybe we'll dive into talking about what it is there and stuff too. We don't have to talk about these societies, but maybe there'll be some updates that'll be pretty interesting to chat about. Maybe we'll see some of these societies having evolved. Again, some of them they're talking about how over the last couple of decades have evolved, and time probably passes just the same in the Starfinder universe as it does now, and probably has all the same weird apocalyptic space problems, like the dead sun things with the bajillion Dyson spheres and a super death weapon that could destroy solar systems. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, I hope all of you enjoyed. Yeah, the ferret-looking ones. They're technically feline, but they kind of look like ferrets. There's really a lot of cool ones out there. Again, thank you all for joining me today. If you liked this stuff, make sure to check me out where I do this. If you're checking it out and want to check it out live, twitch.tv/Dracovin Empire. I do these tabletop-related videos Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. You can catch me live. Give a follow there at very least to, and show some support. Maybe leave a comment here live on the channel. Of course, you can always check this out on YouTube when it goes up a few days later. A subscription on YouTube, a like, ring the bell to say for more of this stuff, and a comment. Have you played any of these in a Starfinder game? I gotta be honest, I think I played one of the base species back in, I think it was a Shirin I played in a one-shot one time. But that was the only time I played. I think it was a Shirin. I don't know. Someone else might have been sharing, but I think one of us was sharing. I was something else. But still, I don't have a lot of experience with playing it myself yet, and I'm curious as to how many of you out there do have that, and what you've dived into. And have you tried out some of these really interesting and strange, unique alien species? That's a question. Anyway, if you're looking for information about what's going on, my schedule, all that kind of stuff, I have my Discord, which should be linked below, and my website, formerly known as Twitter, linked below. I give, brain farts occasionally, and mostly scheduling stuff that comes out. And, yeah. I think that's all for today. So all of you out there, we're going to have more Starfinder in a future episode. I hope you enjoy learning more species, and we dive deeper, talk a little bit about them, give you some suggestions of society, where they're from, where they look like, all these kind of things, and you enjoy. But until those future times, when we do this, I bid all of you out there a wonderful and glorious farewell.